Okay, so let's look at using the DOP-based solver instead of this SOP. This is DOPS, but it's just like a built-up. If you go inside, you'll find a DOP network there, right? And so we'll look at not building something as complex as this now, but they're doing something similar. So let's do SOPs, and then let's do another geometry node. Pyro intro dot. So let's instead of going node by node, because we'll be doing that later, we'll use the shelf tool again, and well, not again, we'll use the shelf tool, and let's start. So you need some kind of geometry to start, so let's use the test geometry pig head, why not, and then go out here, right? So I grab that that piece of geometry and then pick one of these. Let's see, we'll do billowy smoke, so it's similar to what we did here, right? So just click on that, and that builds a DOP network for me. So if I come back out, got our SOPs there. Let's put that in a box, and yeah, give it a color. Oops, not that. I want to make the box a different color. Okay, and then put all these in another box. So you can see I've got them ordered there. So it's like the source, the simulation, and then import after the source, right? And then put another box around these. Another box around them, please. Thank you. And let's do that green. So we'll put DOP, and here SOP. So let's go see what has been done for us here. So I'm going to get rid of that and then just dive inside here. Got this funny nulls here where it's like bringing in from the render there, but I just, we don't need to see that. It's just a way of visualizing, I think, the simulation while you're playing around with the source. So similar to what we had before, we got the pig head, the geometry, and then creating the density. In this case, we're scattering points on the surface, adding noise to that again. So again, here we just got density and temperature. We're rasterizing that just like before. Here you can see they've added in other things, but we're only generating density and temperature, so those are the only things you will get. What we could do is velocity, because we haven't looked at that. So I like to use this point velocity to add some velocity to this. So right now we don't have any, but what we can do is add curl noise and visualize that. You can see we start to get something there now. So that is our velocity field. That's not our velocity field, that's velocity on the points. And in here, we'll be rasterizing our velocity there. Now, if I delete that, see there's a little bit of a change there. Maybe if I, push up the scale, you can see it a bit more. All right, we'll come back to that if we don't see the results in the simulation. And that goes there, we have a null, and then that is sourced into our DOP network. Dive inside there. So in your DOP network, as per usual, you always have some kind of solver. You always, as far as I know, have some kind of object, okay, which is like your container for your geometry. This does the calculations. And then we've got other stuff. We've got source, so this is bringing in those, you remember that source tab that we have on the SOP solver? This is all the same kind of thing. With density, how do we deal with the math? Temperature, here we're adding it in instead of using the pull. And then velocity we're bringing in, and you can see here, remember I was talking about fields. This term is just a terminology thing. Within DOPS, within a dynamic area, volumes are called fields. On the outside, they're called volumes, or VDBs. They're often, if it is a VDB, right? But in here, they're referred to as fields. If that's ever confusing when you see field, that is a volume, right? So temperature, density, all the same stuff. And that's brought in. You can have multiple different sources. That's why we have a merge there. You can bring them in from different places. We've got this resize container thing. This really now is kind of not necessary, and I'll explain why in a minute. But what it does, you can see, is resize our container. Yeah. And then pyro here, we got a smoke object. So yeah, these shelf tools here are not really old, but older than. If we just go into here and start typing pyro, we got the pyro solver sparse, which is most of the time what you want to be using. So the only difference, the only advantage to this that I can think of over the sparse is the ability to use OpenCL. OpenCL won't work in the sparse solver, right? But it will work with your pyro solver. So if you've got a simulation which is, like a kind of box shape, and you want it to stay a box shape, and it's full of smoke in that shape, there's no benefit to using the sparse solver, but there will be a benefit to using the pyro solver and using OpenCL, because that will use your graphics card to accelerate the simulation. So generally you want to be using this. So it works in pretty much the same way. It's just you have to know to use the solver, and the shelf tools don't come with that. So you need the sparse solver and the sparse object as well. So smoke object sparse as well. Okay, so we switch that over and switch over like that, and then the source into the second input, and the sparse object, sorry, into here as well. Just get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that. Okay, and that should still work. Let's see. There we go. Going super quickly. So yeah, you can see our defaults there. What's happening is not billowy smoke now, because we've lost these micro solvers that we were talking about before, but we can turn them back on, like the turbulence. We can bring down, in the simulation here, not in the simulation, sorry, in the smoke object, we got the voxel size, which is, what we spoke about before, the resolution really of the simulation. Bring that down, we get more detail. Visualization stuff is all down here. You can just go through and play around with this. Let's see, if we want to visualize the velocity, that's pretty cool. Right, and then you can go into the velocity tab here to change how that looks. I want to see different parts. What's the velocity like over here or over here? You can change the streamer length to match, the scale of velocity that you've got in your sim. But you can just go through there and play around with them. We don't need to talk about all of them. Gravity, I don't know if it's necessary. I think it's built in. Yeah, so we can get rid of that. But yeah, you kind of got all the same stuff here, right? You got turbulence, shredding, disturbance, dissipation, but then you can also add them in yourself. So let's see, if we put in gas, we've got all of these gas micro solvers that can be used to modify your simulation in some way. So we could add gas turbulence and add that into forces. I thought it was, yeah, the last one. I never remember which input. Okay, and that will do the same thing as this, but you have a bit more control. Basically, you've got more parameters here to play around with. Okay, so I can turn that off there, and then make sure this, I don't know, just push up the scale just to see if we can see something. Push it up more. There we go. You can see it's kind of at the beginning, especially, it's getting pushed around. And then in here, you've got the temperature stuff, time scale, flames. That's all on the SOP solver as well. It's not the SOP solver, it's the solver in SOPs. The SOP solver is another thing, but I keep saying that. We got color stuff in here, advanced sub-steps. We've got a bit more control there. Sparsity, that's turned on by default, as this is the sparse solver. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't want to go into too much detail now, because we'll come to it again in the future. So yeah, we'll leave that there. Like I said, just kind of go through these, take a look at them, see, how do we deal with fire, color as well as interesting, smokeless flame. You got all these weird kind of stuff. It's nice to play around with them and see how other people build their simulations. So next we'll apply some dust to a previous simulation that we made. So one thing I forgot to talk about is this pyro imports that was generated for us. So in here we've got a couple of DOP imports here. So we've got this DOP.io, which really is the same as DOP import. No, it's not the same. Yeah, this DOP import fields, we're bringing in those fields. So, you put the name, if you remember the sourcing, we had density, vel, not v, vel. We got a couple of rest fields that you may want to use. They're not often used. Temperature, heat, fuel, CD, and you can see this. You can set the visibility of them just within SOPs. It doesn't affect your render really. And then here you've got this kind of visualization thing that just shows you what it looks like within the DOP network as well. Okay, so if you're building your own network, you need this DOP.io to bring in your simulation, and you can see it there. Can we? Where is it? Let's see why we don't see it. There we go. Now we can see it. So let's bring in our smoke, and then here that's not working. Oh, it's because I changed the auto DOP network there. I think it's this. So we could try and fix it just to show you. So the object is the sparse one, right? So if we go in here, it's this. If I copy that name, fingers crossed this works. Just paste that name in there. Will that work? Still no. Maybe, I guess it doesn't generate that visualization field. Anyway, I normally just use this, or to be honest, 9 times out of 10 I'll just use the SOP based solver, and that's probably what we'll use for the rest of the course.